Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccer Nostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview Norwegian blogger Mr. Joachim Aasan. Mr. Aasan is one of the duo that make up the fantastic website Italia90.com, dedicated to that World Cup. This is an interview that is separate from the podcast series. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog interview with Mr. Aasan. Mr. Aasan has a story to tell about traveling to Iran in 2014 to watch a couple of soccer matches in different cities. Thank you, Joachim. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. I'm pleased to be here.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm from Oslo, Norway, 49 years old. More a nostalgic football fan really than anything else these days. I don't really pay that much attention to contemporary football. It's the old football that really gets me these days, to be honest.
Yeah, I understand that. So let's go and discuss your travel to Iran. How did your decision to travel to Iran to watch football matches come about?
It was sort of a coincidence, to be honest. Prior to the 2014 World Cup, I was kind of looking for a team to follow to make the tournament a bit more interesting, perhaps, because as always, Norway were never playing a part anyway. So I need like an incentive, I suppose, to try and gain some personal momentum before the tournament. And I wanted some like minor team, not one of the bigger guns, I suppose. So why it was Iran specifically, that's more or less a coincidence, to be honest. But I'm quite pleased that it turned out to be so.
So let's discuss the online threads on football in Norway and how popular are these, because that's what led you to travel to Iran.
That's true, yes. There used to be quite a popular message board, not so much for people like myself who prefer football from past times. They are like mostly for fans of today, English Premier League fans. But there are some strange guys as well, like myself, who didn't mind to dip our toes into stranger kind of scenes, so to speak. So there were a few of us who were actually taking part in the thread before the 2014 World Cup about various teams, and not just following the big nations, but also the smaller ones. And it was particularly me and myself and another guy who were following Iran. I was probably the more eager one, but he was contributing well as well. So he was a good partner in crime.
And do you remember? I know you mentioned you didn't want to pick the bigger guns, but ultimately, why do you think you chose Iran in these threads?
Also, because obviously it's a very interesting country historically, politically. They had not been part of the World Cup for quite some time. I think it was 1998 when they had last played part, unless I'm mistaken.
2006, but it was a quick exit.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. But that was sort of another part of the reason why I wanted to follow, because they had Carlos Queiroz, the Portuguese manager, who was known for quite a defensive approach to the game. So they rarely conceded many goals. They didn't score a lot either. I've always been kind of intrigued by teams who have low score games, and Iran were among them. So yeah, that's another reason, I suppose.
And how were you analyzing Iran's World Cup team within this thread?
We were looking at the pre-tournament build-up games. They were playing quite a few games. I think they were in Austria for like a pre-tournament camp. I can't remember who specifically they played in the pre-tournament friendlies, but there were a few. And during during these friendlies, we were trying our best to analyze the team, the formation, the players, the individuals, the way they looked to play, they wanted to play, the way they wanted to portray themselves. Obviously, it's difficult to know how much they emphasize these friendlies, but they were a good indicator for me who didn't have much to go on before I started following the pre-2014 World Cup.
And at what part during this analysis process did you actually make the decision to travel to Iran?
I think this was a bit later when I actually made the decision to travel there, because the more I got involved with the team, I got quite familiar with some of the players, the way they played, the more familiar players in the team, obviously. And I'm always curious to go somewhere new. Iran obviously would be a great choice to go for your holidays. So after a while, I decided why not try and go there to maybe take in a couple of games, 3 games, if there is the opportunity to do so. And I was very pleased when the opportunity presented itself. Yeah, it's very nice.
Had you taken trips like this before?
Not purely out of football interests, apart from going to England, because I've been to England quite a few times. Obviously, it's a short journey across from Norway, and I've followed the lower leagues in England, the non-league scenes. But other countries, apart from that, no, not really, not with like a football purpose, so to speak. Now.
Yes. Was it fairly easy to obtain a visa to travel to Iran to watch football matches?
It wasn't that difficult, to be honest. I was kind of curious about the process before I made the application, and it was quite swift. I think it took me about, well, swift, that's all relative. I think it took me about 3 weeks before I had everything completed and I had the documents to travel. So it was quite straightforward, to be honest. The Iranian embassy in Oslo were quite helpful. I visited a few times, and every time I was made very welcome. They were very polite, very friendly. So yeah, pretty straightforward, to be honest.
Yeah. Were they at all surprised that someone would from Norway would travel to Iran just to watch football matches?
Yeah, I suppose to a degree they were. I can't remember exactly how much I introduced my itinerary to the embassy, but I probably would have mentioned that I was going there to watch football. So I think it was probably quite amusing for them as well. Why would someone from Norway go to Iran to watch domestic football?
Okay, so let's get to it now. What was the first city you visited, and what match, and any experience you can describe in and out of the stadium?
Yeah, obviously the international flights come to Tehran. Mine landed, I don't remember exactly the time, but it was like in the middle of the night, very early morning. And I got on a taxi from the airport to one of the southern bus stations in Tehran. And my ambition was to travel to Isfahan, which is obviously a historically famous city in it's not southern Iran, I suppose, but it's sort of a bit further south than the middle. And Isfahan is about 350 kilometers away. I managed to get a bus pass, like a VIP pass, they called it, but it was not really anything particular, to be honest, just a regular seat. But it was all right. Pretty straightforward journey, 6-7 hours. And when I got there, I found a taxi, and the taxi took me to the hotel, which I pre-booked. So yeah, that was going to be my base for 1 week. I had planned to see just a single game. That was Sepahan Isfahan, obviously one of Iran's main clubs, but they were not currently playing in Isfahan itself at the time. I'm not sure whether they are back in Isfahan now. Do you know?
I wouldn't know.
No, I'm unsure as well. Um, they were playing out of the town in a town called Fulad Shar, about half an hour away. So that was pretty late in the week. I'd spent nearly the entire week there before I went to the football game. So I got a taxi out of town on match day. I arrived very early because I had checked the website beforehand, and I got the impression that the game started around 4:30 in the afternoon, which I thought was a bit strange because it was very, very warm, obviously, like more than 35 degrees. And for me from the north, obviously, very warm. And I thought it wasn't going to be great condition to play football in. But it turned out when I arrived there that there was almost no one else outside the stadium. I thought there would be quite a few people already, but there was almost no one there, like only a couple of soldiers, military people. Um, so I found out pretty quickly that the game started at 7 and not 4:30. So I had like quite some time to kill before the game. And I found some friendly people, friendly locals who were residing. Well, they were sitting on the grass quite near the stadium, like on a big carpet spread out with tea. And they saw this strange guy walking past a couple of times, and they invited me over to have some tea with them. Probably conversation, but it turned out that they didn't speak much English. So there was not much of a conversation like in conventional terms, but they were quite interested in historic football as well. So somehow we ended up discussing lineups from World Cup finals from years ago, years before, and it was quite interesting. It's quite a strange setting to be in, but it was really, really nice. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very nice people.
And the match itself inside the stadium, how was that experience like?
Yeah, after a while, when the stadium opened, more and more people were obviously coming, and I was just following the crowds really to enter the stadium. I can't remember exactly how long before kickoff I arrived inside, but I was there quite early. I probably had an hour still before the kickoff when I was shown to my seat. Quite scenic, very nice. You had some mountains on the right-hand side behind the one goal. On the other side, there was like the Ayatollah and another religious leader, I think, that was pictured just above the stand. And they were playing in Zobahan's ground. Zobahan is Sepahan's main rival in Isfahan. And more and more people started coming. Teams came out to warm up, and I was obviously there to see one of my big Team Melli heroes. Team Melli is obviously the nickname in Iran for
the national team. Yes,
national team. Yeah, it means the national team. National
yes,
team.
yes.
Yeah. I was hoping to see Ehsan Hajsafi, who's one of my favorite players in the Iranian team. He was a player with Sepahan at the time. But unfortunately, I didn't see him anywhere during the warm-up. So I was thinking, where is he? Why is he not here? So I asked a couple of people around me if anyone could explain why he was not playing. And one told me that he was probably on his way to English football to feature for Hull City. So yeah, I was going to miss out on him, unfortunately. They had started the season really well. I can't remember how many games they had played, but 5, 6 games, something like that. And I think they were top of the table. So they were playing a team called Fulad. Nothing to do with Fulad Shar, the town, who were a bit further down the table. So I think probably an easy home win was expected.
So your next destination was Tehran, the capital. And what match did you go to watch there? And if you can also recount your experiences, if it was any way different from Isfahan or Fulat I should say.
Yeah. After the game in Ulaanbaatar with Sepahan, the game finished 1-1, by the way, a draw. Um, I completed the week, a wonderful week in Isfahan. It's a beautiful city. Some great sights there. Unfortunately, the main river in the city was dry, so you can actually walk from one side to the other without getting your feet wet, which was a bit strange because I'd seen a few pictures of the most famous bridge across the river before I traveled, and I would really wanted to see that again with my own eyes, but unfortunately, without the water in the river, it wasn't anything similar to what I'd seen beforehand. But that was probably the only disappointment I experienced. So I got back to the capital, another journey on the bus from Isfahan to Tehran, 6-7 hours again. On the way there, it stopped like in the middle of the desert to for people to have a snack or something at the restaurant. And the temperature showed it was 43 degrees, and it was extremely warm. My warmest experience ever. But anyway, after a while, we arrived back in Tehran. Um, I had pre-booked, obviously, a hotel in the far east end of the city. It's a huge city, Tehran. I think, including suburbs, it has nearly 15, 16 million people, if not even more. So the taxi ride from where the bus had stopped, the bus station, the bus terminal, was probably about an hour, and the car that took me there, the taxi driver, the taxi itself broke down 3 times on the way in heavy traffic, and I thought I was never going to make it to the hotel. But I did get there after a while, and it was quite a nice area as well where the hotel was situated. Nice hotel, good place. And obviously, what you want to do is familiarize yourself with the local area once you've arrived. And I did that, and I realized that the metro station for me to get into the city center was 20-25 minutes walk away. On the map beforehand, it had looked a lot closer, but everything felt just like on a bigger scale once I was there. Everything was like with huge dimensions, massive city. I was quite overwhelmed, and I'd only really experienced that kind of feeling before when I'd been to Istanbul, Turkey. The feeling of being overwhelmed. Anyway, the game was towards the end of the week, so I enjoyed my time in Tehran in the lead up to the game. The game this time was going to be at the international stadium, the Azadi Stadium, so the Liberty Stadium, I think it's translated
Yes.
as.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was Esteghlal, obviously one of the two major clubs, Persepolis, the other one. And they were playing Gostaresh. I can't remember from which city, but from out of town anyway. So match day, I made my way from the hotel to the city center, trying to get as near the stadium as I could on the metro. And then I didn't really know exactly how to get from the metro station to the stadium, because I realized it was quite a journey still, probably, I don't know, 6-7 kilometers, something like that. But when I got off the metro, I realized that there was designated buses for the fans from the metro station to the stadium. So I was shown where I could go by some local friendly people. Everyone was very, very helpful. There was like usually a very limited English vocabulary among the locals, but they tried like in every possible way they could, sign language, anything, to direct me anywhere or try to reply any question I might have. So I ended up at the stadium. I didn't arrive this early as I had in Isfahan. Bought my tickets, made my way, was stopped by quite a few people along the concourse to where my seat was, and they were all asking, "Are you German? Are you German?" So I might have a look about me, I don't know, but yeah, it's quite a strange experience when you just try to you prefer to keep a low profile, don't want to be seen or to stand out, but you do in that environment. So it was strange, but it was nice. The Azadi Stadium is obviously a huge one. I'm sure people out there know approximately the capacity, 100,000, if not more.
Right, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. It might be a bit less with the seats coming in and everything, but there is like two tiers. On the top tier, there's no seats, only standing. Or maybe if you want to sit on the concrete, you can do. But the lower tier has seats all around, I think 360 degrees. So I was on the main side, quite near the center of the pitch, and I had a great view. And I'd been hoping there to see another couple of my favorite players from the Team Melli side during the World Cup. They were central defender Amir Hussein Sadeghi, and the midfielder with a ponytail. I'm sure he's quite recognizable among even people who watch this. Andrik Teimourian. Yeah. As it turned out, it was only Sadeghi who started the game among those two, but Teimourian was at least on the bench. So I had a great hope of seeing him during the course of the game. And the stadium, the atmosphere, it's probably, I don't know, it's very difficult. I didn't see any attendance figures later, but I would think around 15,000 maybe. Probably not more than that. Difficult to say, but they generated quite a decent atmosphere, especially the people on the upper tier who were probably standing, crowded together. On the lower tier where I was seated, I was talking with a few people. One was both very knowledgeable about Esteghlal and the domestic football scene, as well as speaking very, very good English, better than mine. So he kind of briefed me on the team and these things. Very amusing, very interesting. The game, I can't remember again very much about the game itself, but I think it was more or less one-way traffic. It finished with a 3-0 scoreline for the home side. And Sadeghi was quite good at centre half, like he had been for the national team during the World Cup. Very, very solid player. Teimourian, the midfielder, came on during the second half. I was quite pleased to have seen him as well. So at least I got the chance to see 3 of those favorite players of mine from the national team during the World Cup. There was a 4th player from the national team as well. I can't remember his name now. I think he was playing right side for midfield. Well, anyway, so yeah, there was 4 in total from the national team who I got to see.
Yes. Now, you mentioned that you were stopped a few times because you're a Westerner. Do you think many of the people assume you may be a journalist?
I wasn't directly asked that question at any point, but who knows? Maybe it could be. Like I mentioned, I was repeatedly asked whether I'm a German. So I probably have features like a German, which is not strange anyway for a Scandinavian guy. But about journalists, about me being a journalist, no, I didn't really get that question. No.
Right. Now, you mentioned about the history between Persepolis and Esteghlal. Before going to Iran, were you aware of their history and the cultural place in football in Iran of those two teams?
Yes, yes and no. Not to like a great depth, but obviously, most people who have at least uh, some insight in football, they know that Persepolis and Esteghlal are the two big rivals in Iranian football on the domestic scene. I think I haven't checked facts, but the, they have for sure competed in Champions League finals in Asia. I don't know whether they've triumphed, probably, but I'm not sure.
I think Esteghlal has, yeah.
Oh, they have, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But they are massive clubs,
Right.
huge support in Iran, both of them. I think not just in Tehran, but
Oh,
nationally.
yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And obviously, your trip had been more, I guess, geared towards the football of Iran. But do you think, in retrospect, you came out with more satisfaction in experiencing everything else around, or in addition to the football?
Oh yeah, definitely. It wasn't just purely about football. It was, well, that was the main ambition to start with. The more I realized I was going to Iran, the more I was looking forward to the prospect of seeing some great sites as well. Not that I saw a whole lot of historical sites, unfortunately, but I did get to see some of the more typical tourist attractions in Tehran, at least, like the Milad Tower, the Azadi Monument, the Liberty Monument, um, the Golestan Palace, which is a fantastic site to visit. So yeah, definitely more than just the football, and just the feeling of being in a country like Iran. To me, it's very exotic. So I just walked around there pinching myself, to be honest, realizing that I was in Iran. It was brilliant.
Yes. And how long did it take the whole trip?
I was there for a total of 2 weeks. 1 week in Isfahan, 1 week in Tehran. Yeah.
Yeah. So well worth taking trip basically for you.
Definitely. I'd do it again. I keep telling my friends, my relatives, anyone who wants to listen, that it's the best journey I've ever made in my life. So I'll recommend Iran to anyone.
Well, I thank you again for sharing this experience with all of us, and also to remind everyone to please read the main blog article for more detail. The link is included on the video upload description, along with our respective contact information. So thank you, and may we continue our correspondences on football.
Definitely. Thank you, Jean.
Thanks again.
Pleasure. Thank you.